I can't get into my SIP bed because of this lovely box that makes it high enough to be comfortable to garden in. But turns out there is a disadvantage. I can't get in there and prune. Will I be able to pick? I don't know. But that's not the half of it. That's a fraction. Here's the real issue. I refilled the reservoir less than 48 hours ago. And if there's any water left, it should be on the yardstick. 48 hours ago. And the reservoir is already completely dry. The honeymoon phase with the SIP beds is officially over. Hey everybody, this is Emily. And right away I want to make the disclaimer that that video I made on the pros and cons of SIP beds, which by the way I'm going to link to above in case you haven't seen it, those still stand. I still believe that SIP raised beds are great for, you know, a number of reasons, but in the past couple of weeks Jerry and I have learned some important lessons about them that I don't think you can probably find anywhere else online, and I wanted to share them with you. First of all, if you live in a place that has really hot summers and you overplant your SIP bed, yeah, you're going to end up in a situation like we are, refilling it every 2 to 3 days. And why is that? Well, what Jerry finally deduced is, and I think this is true, is that even if the plants don't really necessarily desperately need all that water in the reservoir, if it's there and they want it, they'll take it. Now, tomatoes aren't naturally that thirsty, I don't think, but the mix that we have in here, they've grown way bigger, way faster than I've ever seen. Now, I mean, eventually they would get this big and we would probably still have, you know, end up with the problem of them taking up a lot of water pretty quickly. But, you know, we've also got this notoriously thirsty plant down here called the cucumber, you know, and this thing is going to keep growing bigger and bigger, and the more fruit it has, the more water it's going to want. So I come to you today with a couple of cautions, and the first is, you know, you can't just do biointensive or square foot spacing of plants like that and then expect that you'll only have to water, you know, every couple of weeks, every month or something. Now, that worked in our other bed with the peppers and the kale, because peppers and kale are, you know, don't use a whole lot of water. Now, that might change now that I've got a cucumber plant in that other bed. It might start drinking up more water. We'll have to see. And the other caution I want to make to you isn't going to be relevant probably to most people watching this video. Most people are on the water grid, or if you're off the grid, you might have a well that, you know, you don't, it's like a never-ending well, a never-ending supply of water, and if so, that's great. But for those of you who are just coming cold to this video and don't know, we are off the grid for water. There's, if I can get over here. All right, see that big white thing there? This is a 2,500 gallon rain tank, and we have 2 more behind the tough shed, and that's basically all our water. We have some water in a pool, which but we use that. We want to preserve that for watering the trees in the summer. All of our fruit trees, that is already going down quickly because it hasn't rained lately. I did the math and I figured out if we continue to give this bed 55 gallons every 3 days, something's biting me, excuse me. That's going to end up being like almost 1,000 gallons in about 2 months. And, you know, it is possible that it would not rain for 2 months. We usually have a little more rainfall in the summer in this area because it's a more humid climate. But, you know, you never know. And we can't count on there being rain, you know. We have to be conservative. No way am I going to give 1,000 gallons of water to this bed over the summer, and let me explain why. When I had cucumbers growing in the ground, I would give them 1 gallon of water a day. Over a 2-month period, how many gallons is that per plant? 60, yeah, 60 days, 60 gallons of water for the entire 2-month period, okay? Not in a 2-day period. Thank you very much. Now, the cucumbers may not have produced or done as well, been as healthy. I mean, even this one doesn't look that great. It's had, you know, cucumber beetles and stuff on it. That doesn't help. But still, even though this cucumber wants maybe, you know, 30 gallons of water a day, I don't know, 20, because there's all those tomatoes too competing. Even if it wants that much, it will produce without getting nearly that much water. And now somebody's going to say, well, that's because when they're in the ground, all the tap roots can go down and find deep sources of water underground. Please trust me when I say to you that in this area, no. In most areas, in many places of this property, you go down between 2 and 3 feet, you hit bedrock, okay? And above that, it's very sandy, it's full of rocks, the water goes right through it. This soil does not retain water, okay? The other thing is, I've gardened for, 7 years, and I've dug up tomatoes, and I've dug up cucumbers, and the roots don't go all that deeply. Here's Exhibit B. Now, if you've watched my previous recent gardening vlogs, you know about this volunteer tomato. I did not plant this. I didn't start it inside. I didn't plant a seed here. No, this thing just, you know, some sort of somehow a cherry tomato seed ended up here. It started growing. I've watered it, I think, twice, mainly because I keep forgetting to water it. We haven't had a really good, we've had like a spattering, you know, like maybe barely, you know, I think we had 3/10 of an inch a couple weeks ago or 10 days ago or something. We had a little bit, but over the past 3 weeks to a month, we have not had nearly the equivalent of even 1 gallon a day on this tomato. Okay? Why? Why is it doing so well? I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. Does this look all dried up to you? No. And it has fruit on it. Where's the fruit? Where'd it go? Oh, way down at the bottom there's some. Yeah, the grass is in the way, sorry. There's fruit down there. I don't know if you can see it through all this mess. There's fruit up here. This is easier. So it's got fruit, people. And I'm not watering it. Tomatoes, actually, I read this online, tomatoes actually need very little water once they're established and they start growing. So what's the deal here? I think it's what Jerry said. The water's there, so they take it. They take it, and they're huge, too. But okay, I'm adding this clip in the next day. I wanted to add something else in there about a possible reason why this SIP bed with the tomatoes and cucumber is doing so badly, and that might be because it has peat moss based potting mix. Peat moss, unless you continually put water on it, it dries up at the drop of a hat, and then it will repel water when you try to add water to it. It does not just automatically absorb water when it's dry. So yeah, that might be another big problem with what we're having with this bed, because I tried to top water yesterday, and you know, the water didn't go down into the bed like it should have. It just would kind of try to go everywhere because the peat moss didn't want to absorb it. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you decide to build SIP beds. Why did we choose that soil? Because we live in the middle of nowhere. We had to, you know, go with what we had locally. So there you go. So for us, being off the grid with water, turns out using SIP beds for at least the thirstier plants, I mean, maybe I'll probably continue to grow peppers in the SIP beds. Look, I mean, they're not sucking up all the water. But for everything else, we're going to change our tactic. We were going to build several more SIP beds, but I changed my mind. What am I going to be doing instead? Lasagna gardening. So, long story short, yes, there are definite advantages to SIP beds, but if you're in any of the situations that I've just tossed out to you, or, you know, if you really want to do an SIP bed, you know, just be careful about how much and what kind of plant you put in it if you need to be careful with water usage for any reason. Well, thanks a lot for watching. If you found this video helpful, you can give it a thumbs up and share it with your networks. I'll see you for the next video. In the meantime, take care and happy gardening.